when we were at the intensive and Dan and Justin and I were working with folks, at least for me, it sucks so much energy from me that, when you're just going deep with someone and when you're in person, that energy gets fed back so much more. So just for me, from a fulfilling standpoint, for that kind of an event, I really do like the in-person. I think for someone looking at this, if they're just starting out, virtual events are easier. They're less risky. They can be produced much more inexpensively. So I think there's tremendous advantages. And in terms of the attendees, there's some people they can't travel because they're taking care of their kids or they're taking care of their parents or they're taking care of both of them or they don't have a passport or whatever. So there's always going to be some people that don't travel. So there are benefits to virtual events. But boy, if you can get face to face with your people, the bigger picture payoffs. I mean, if you just go back on this podcast, all the people that have been on this podcast, I think almost every single one of them has been part of our broader community. And they've been people that we have met first at in-person events. So if you just look at this body of work of Dare to Launch and look at every guest we've had, I think just about every single one of them we have first met in person at an event. So that shows you, the power of in-person. So like if you're just starting out, then it feels overwhelming to do something like that, start virtually. But at some point to create like a really high impact, high touch, small in-person events I think is a huge lever in your business.
I think there had been such a huge trend of people being virtual that there's a burnout that's been experienced of being on a screen or being on a virtual event, and many people working from home or on Zoom for a long time. And I think that there's been just a reaction to that now there's a craving for that connection, that more intimate and in-person experience. It feels like a very macro level thing that's happening. And to fight that with your events or to fight that with your program doesn't sound to me like a very strategic way of looking at it. I don't know if the two of you can speak to that.
I think so. And it's funny because we're recording this episode just a short bit before it airs. And so I think by the time this episode airs, we'll have opened up registration for this second launch intensive. At this point right now, we're actually putting the final touches on the registration page for it and stuff. And so I've been going through, we captured some video from the last event and we just asked people like, hey, what do you think? And that was one thing that so many people mentioned, one specific line that jumped out, one woman, she said if you are lucky enough to find a great in-person event was how she put it. It was something that came up over and over for folks who were there that they just loved that. I heard it described as vacation, which is just wild to think, but it was described as vacation, like literally just setting aside everything else. I mean, I think that's a big part of it too. In virtual events, right? It's nice. You turn off the computer and you go and, you have dinner with your family and you go sleep in your own bed and whatever. But there's also some real power in I'm away. I'm in a different environment. I can set aside my normal day-to-day concerns. I can set aside and put pause on what I would normally be working on in these couple days. And I'm just giving myself the space to really hone in and go deep and to focus on that sort of strategic, creative level thinking. That's the stuff that as entrepreneurs, I think that's the stuff that really moves our businesses forward in the long run. If you look back at the best years, the best times you ever had in business, I would guess you're not thinking of the times that you're, just answering every email that comes in or, working through the to-do list. They're the times in which you really honed in and set aside that time for that strategic thinking and business building. There's something to that. I heard it over and over in these videos. It's described as a gift that they gave to themselves, described as a vacation, just to be able to disconnect for a little bit and just focus in on what really matters.
I would so much agree with that. Everything in my business it's come through a lot of hard work, but mostly partnership and relationship. And the thing is it's easy to think I've got an online business, so I just sit behind a computer and type on my keyboard. But this business is built on connections. And I have such incredibly deep connections throughout the industry, friends now for 20 years that I could just, if I lost everything, I think if I called them up, they'd give me the shirt off their back. That's just because I got out to live events. They have made all the difference in the world, was getting to events and connecting with people. And I think like the very first event I went to, and this was in the year of 2000. And at that point, the best launch I ever had was about $30,000, which was amazing. It was unbelievable. I think probably 34,000. It was as much money I ever made in a year. But I had another launch coming up, and I went to this event, and it was in Los Angeles, which I had a young family at the time. So the idea of leaving my family and traveling to Los Angeles seemed crazy, but I did it. And one of the people speaking at the events was this guy. His name was Ken Evoy. He was like a prominent teacher in marketing then. And he was like my hero that I studied everything he did. And I went, and he was going to be one of the speakers at the event. And I was so excited about that. And I went to the event, and I got to the hotel, and I went to get in the elevator. And I got on the elevator, and and then we went up a flight, the doors open, and this Ken Evoy walks into the elevator. And I was just like, I was dumbstruck. Oh my God, this is like my marketing hero. And I'm getting to meet my marketing hero. And I got a conversation with him, struck up a relationship with him that continued on. And a few of the ideas he gave me took my next launch, did over $100,000. That was my first 6-figure launch, based on just a few conversations I had with Ken. Best launch was 34,000. The next one was 104,000, based on a few of those conversations. Even that diminishes what live events. I mean, that was an incredible growth from doing that, from that one event. But then if I look at the relationships and the connections I've made over the years, it's just breathtaking. I can go on. I could talk for the next 24 hours about the different friends I've made and the impacts they've made on me, both to my learning, my psychology, but also my bottom line. And so, I think business is best done in person, and virtual is amazing. I love virtual. Virtual's done amazing things for me. It's changed my life, but not compared to in person. And that's why I love putting on events. Over the years now, I think I'm closing in on having done 100 in small in-person events, most of them with my masterminds. So I know how to put on a great workshop. And that's why, I'm so proud of this, this intensive we did and the one we're just about to do, because I just know, like Dan said, the impact we made on people in those couple days is just breathtaking. And I know the relationships we built in that, and then we're going to build in this next one. Those are going to carry forward for years and probably for decades. Virtual is awesome. Virtual is amazing. Do virtual events, but get in person. If you can do an in-person event, we're about to do this intensive. Come out to our intensive. It's going to be just absolutely mind-blowing for you. Business it's a full contact sport. It's a full contact sport. You want to be in contact with others, with other teachers, with other peers. You want to be making connections. Nothing else will accelerate your growth the way being in person with folks. Nothing will have the impact of an in-person event.
Hey, Launch family, one more thing before you go. You heard us talk about it throughout the episode. It's the Launch Intensive. This is where you get to go into Colorado, Durango, work with Jeff Walker, Dan Walker, and Justine Livingston for 2 days, and you'll leave with a world-class launch plan. Now, this Launch Intensive will sell out quickly, so go to getyouLaunched.com right now to secure your seat. That's getyouLaunched.com. We'll see you on the next episode.